Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Talking Carp Magazine's YouTube video podcast. Today I have with me a gentleman who needs no introduction, and that is Mr. Adam Penning. Adam,
I'm
how are you
very
today?
good. Thank you, Mark. Cheers for asking me on for this. Very nice to be invited. So cheers for that.
Our pleasure, mate. Our pleasure. Hopefully I've got some decent questions for you, and I think what we'll do to kick it all off let's go back to the beginning for your fishing. Was there one moment that sort of truly ignited your love for carp fishing?
Yeah, I guess that would probably be the first time I caught a carp. That was from that moment on, it's been like a full on juggernaut. So that was the 26th Friday, the 26th of July, 1985 at 12:30.
Wow.
Lunchtime. And it was bearing in mind that I'd only caught gudgeon, roach, a few small chub and perch, probably nothing bigger than a pound or so, to suddenly have a fish of 12 pound on floating crust was so preposterously more massive than anything else we had ever seen that it would be like me seeing an 80 pounder today. I've never seen a fish that big. You would just leave your jaw on the floor probably. So that was the moment. And since then, I can still remember that vividly. It was just, you get certain moments in your angling life that just leave an indelible mark on you, and that was certainly my first carp. Yeah, definitely.
Amazing memory. So obviously something that really stuck with you. So going back to that time, and you're catching your first carp, who were your biggest, or what were your biggest influences when you were developing then as an angler at an early age? And were there any key lessons you learnt back then that have kind of stuck with you now?
In terms of lessons, determination and persistence was probably the first lesson that I learned on that very actual, on that day in question when I caught that carp, because I'd been under the illusion that I was going to catch a carp that day, and it turned out to be a lot harder than I imagined. I was woefully under-equipped.
Right.
Got to the lake on my bike at about 4 a.m. and didn't have the right gear. All I had was a sort of an attitude of persistence that I was going to get one somehow. And by the time it had got to lunchtime and I'd not caught anything other than a few rudd on floating bread, I was pretty sort of despondent and gone into a bit of a teenage sulk. And but I hadn't given up, and I kept trying, and then I caught this carp. And so that was actually a lesson. I've just been writing about it for one of the magazines, not that particular incident, but about the element of determination and persistence that in my modern carp fishing armory, that's one of the things that gets me where I want to be in terms of fish I want to catch. Just, it doesn't, if I'm not the best angler, but I'm usually the last to go home, sort of. Do you know what I mean? So if you're there just grinding away through the hard times, then that is a valuable thing to have in your locker, and that is something that I sort of realised I had from day one when that aforementioned story took place. So in terms of influences, through that period of time, so that was 85, so that was 10 months after seeing Richie McDonald in the Angling Times with Basil, 45 pound 12 ounces, and Keith O'Connor on the front cover with a 43 pounder, which was the Hearts Club Lake fish. So Richie's fish in particular was very, very fervently stoked my imagination. And in terms of what I was reading at the time, Rod Hutchinson, through the well, all the way through the 80s and the 90s, Hutchie was an icon. I devoured everything that he wrote, and I loved that at the same time I was reading Kevin Maddox. I mean, Carp Fever had been published probably 4 years before that Carp came along, and
Right.
so that was a book I'd gone and borrowed from the library, and then and Kevin's way of writing, I ended up working for Kevin in the very early 90s for a period of time, and Kevin was a brilliant angler who really obviously transcended his time and made such a massive impact on carp fishing. But he was quite a serious sort of guy, whereas Rod wasn't.
Yeah.
Rod was more my sort of kind of guy. He was full of like the fun.
Right.
He would have a lot of fun along the way. Didn't take himself too seriously, and so I really sort of gravitated towards the Hutchinson school of having fun and mixing that with carp fishing. And The Carp Strikes Back is still my favourite book of all time. And
Okay.
and then similarly, through the late 80s, the very late 80s, and just over the turn of that decade into the 90s, it was Rob Malin who was a massive influence. And I think that was also through being in a similar vein to what Hutchie presented himself as someone who was brilliant at catching carp, but liked to have a lot of fun along the way. And again, that really sort of resonated with me. And I think that those two characters probably, they definitely had the biggest impact on me through the 80s, the 90s, and probably a bit still to this day.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. So when you were kind of, these guys were having that sort of influence, when did it sort of, was it a realization that your entire, you would make a career out of catching carp?
And
Oh, really?
and I never actively sought to do so. So
Oh, okay.
I've never set out to be known or to be a writer or to work as an angler in the industry. It basically, it just all sort of happened in a sort of domino effect, I suppose. So all I set out to do was get a job working in the angling industry insofar as packing boxes. So I answered a box advert in what then was Carp Talk. We're going back to about 94. So in 94,
Right.
you didn't, there weren't jobs in the angling industry like there are now. There was no media or anything like that. So
No.
I was working in the print business, and I was based in Scotland at the time. I used to go up to Glasgow every Monday morning on a plane, work in the factory, and then come home Friday night and then go fishing for the weekend. And I did that for a while, and it was all right. And I was sat down the lake with a couple of mates, and we were reading one of these copies of Carp Talk, which was probably very new on the scene at that time. I think it started about that year, but I noticed a box ad for a fishing company. It didn't say which company. It was a PO box number, but it said that it had a warehouse job for packing orders of fishing tackle, and applicants should apply here. So I applied just because I thought, that would be fun. I like fishing. I wouldn't mind packing boxes of fishing tackle. That was it. That was the height of my ambition.
Wow.
So I applied, and then, well, I mean, probably 6 months later, I got a phone call. No, not as long as that. Probably a couple of months later, I'd certainly forgotten about it anyway, and just thought, well, I failed at that. My CV wasn't particularly good because I didn't do very well at school. So then one day the phone rang, and the landline, and I answered it, and in this rather posh voice, the guy on the other end of the line introduced himself as Peter Drennan, and suddenly I went from going, hello, yes,
Wow.
mate, to going, oh, yes, good evening, Mr. Drennan, yes, how are you? And I suddenly realised that this was the result of the application that I had sent in. And he asked me down to Oxford to have an interview. So I went down there a couple of weeks later, probably, or whenever it was, and I was fairly confident that this would be the next job I was going to get. So what actually happened was a bit of a shock to the system because I didn't do very well at school. I had no selling myself on paper was always very, very difficult. So I had probably applied for
Mm.
various jobs and never heard anything back. And I thought this was going to be the case up until the moment the phone had rung. But usually if I could get face to face with someone, then I usually had a chance. So I thought, right, this is it.
Yeah.
He's invited me down. I'm going to get to meet him. I'm going to get a job working for a fishing company, packing boxes, and I'll be quite happy with that. So I went down there and had a very lengthy interview with Peter and his daughter and one or two other people in management. And the upshot of it was that he said to me that he wasn't going to give me the job. And I was absolutely mortified. Especially having seen the
Wow.
way the place was set up. It was a beautiful old premises, Robert Maxwell Printing Works that Peter had got cheap after Maxwell had fallen off his yacht. And Oxford just had the whole Oxford scene appealed. Everything about it was just a dream. And he said that he wasn't going to give me the job because he thought that if he gave me a job in the warehouse packing these boxes, then I'd do it for a few months and then I'd get bored and leave. Which was very insightful of him because it
Wow.
would have been, he was exactly right. But I was I was protesting at this. I told him he was wrong. I said, look, I would stick it out. It's the perfect job for me. But yeah, he was absolutely right. So he didn't give me the job. Instead, he gave it to somebody else who was a bit more local and who he thought would be someone who would do the job long term. As it happened, the person that he employed, Dave Elliott, still a good mate to this day, is still in that role to this day. So Peter's very good at picking the right person for the
Wow.
right job.
Yeah, absolutely.
But to my chagrin, I was quite upset that I didn't get it. And so I, having had a glimmer of what could be, I then thought, if I keep pestering him, maybe there'll be another job opportunity open up. So I used to ring him up
Yeah.
periodically from the factory in Glasgow, or when I came home at weekends, I'd say, "Hi, it's Adam Penning again. I just wondered if you had any other job opportunities or anything to come up." And he would always thank me for getting in touch and say that no, there wasn't anything going. And this went on for a long time, perhaps a year, and eventually he rang me up. And he said,
Wow.
I've had an idea. He said, there might be something we could do together. Do you want to come back down to Oxford? So I'm in Essex. So
Hmm.
I jumped in a car, drove over there, broke down just before I got there, and it was all very stressful, and I didn't want to be late. And anyway, when I went into this second interview with Peter, he said that he had ideas for developing a new brand, a new brand, a carp fishing brand. And he said, "Well, you know, you like your carp fishing," and he said maybe it's something that we could do together. So suddenly, it had become a real dream opportunity. So not something that
Wow.
I created myself, but Peter had this idea that he wanted to bring this brand to market. So we spent the next so I relocated to Oxford. And over the next couple of years, we spent our time developing what would become ESP, which we launched in
Wow.
spring 99, I think it was. We got Terry Hearn on board. It was not long after he had caught Mary at British record weight, so he was a prime acquisition. And that was his first
Yeah.
sort of sponsored deal. So I drove down to Yateley Angling Centre and met him and brought him back to the office, and we offered him a deal, and he's still with ESP now. And gradually, everything came together. So what I was just saying, see, I do get people message me quite often and say, how do I get famous in carp fishing, or how do I make it, or how do I get whatever? And I always say, like, I'm probably not the person to ask, because I never set out to be where I am. It just all by degrees, it just gradually happened. So the next thing after that was in about 1999, following the launch of ESP. It might have been prior to the launch of ESP, but anyway, Jim Foster, who was the editor of what then was Catchmore Carp and is now Total Carp, he came down to the office. He and David Hall came down to the office, but ostensibly to sell some advertising, but Peter would always put on a lunch, and it was always a nice social occasion. So I got to sort of hobnob with them for lunch, and Jim said to me, you know, you seem like you can put a few sentences together. Would you fancy writing for the magazine? So I said, I'd never written anything. But he said, well, why don't you give it a go? So I wrote an article for Jim. That was reasonably well received. He asked me to write more. So then I became a writer. Then, because of where I was living and the people I was mixing with who were really good anglers, including obviously Terry, who was a massive influence. My
absolutely.
angling ability went up exponentially because of the people I was mixing with. So I caught more fish. So suddenly I was working for one of the big companies. We had launched a big brand. I was writing in the magazines. Peter had a friend who, Chris Sanford, who had some TV presence, and he asked me to go on one of his TV shows as a guest. So it just kind of snowballed, Mark, and it sort of ended up with me being sort of headhunted by a couple of other companies and doing more films and doing more writing, and so it just happened like purely organically. And I think that's something I'm actually quite sort of proud of. Wouldn't be the right word, because I didn't set out for it to be like that, but I am pleased that it happened that way, because it just feels organic and genuine to me, and that's where I am today.
Funny enough, just going right back to the start of this interview, when you talked about when you caught that first carp was through persistence. I mean, if you'd have just said, okay, that's it, and not bothered calling about jobs any further, this could have been a whole, well, your whole life could have turned out different, couldn't it? I mean, it was that persistent just to chase a job packing boxes, where not many people, I don't think, can attest to have done that for a career in fishing. It's absolutely incredible. But so obviously things, since you started, and things have evolved massively, and that, you know, you've spent decades on the bank fishing and everything else. But so as it is now, what's a typical year look like for you now then? When, you know, I mean, because I'm right to say you're not actually sort of associated, or you're not fixed with any brand. You're not employed by a brand, are you? So I'm
a one-man
kind
band.
of, I suppose you write you write your own script kind of thing. So what's the typical year sort of look like when for yourself now?
Well, I guess, I mean, the biggest change for me, so I've been self-employed since the end of 2012, and most of that time I've been operating a tutorial service, a guiding service. But then around, let me see, in the end of 2022, in conjunction with the guys at Carpology at the time, I launched a media platform called Karp Academy. So that is ostensibly it's a sort of educational improvement sort of platform, but at the same time we put out a lot of other more sophisticated content, and we've got a lot of members who have been fishing a long time. It's not just about beginners. And because since we launched that in 2022, that has taken a lot of my time, because we put out a film. We're in our 4th year now, and I say we put out a film. I put out a film every single week for that, and have done since November 2022. So that obviously takes a vast
Right.
amount of my time. So across a typical year, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, because I was going to come on to the Academy as part of this, but just for those that are unfamiliar, can you just give us a quick brief of what the Academy is and what the Academy aims are? And, what is a typical sort of session for somebody if they're part of that Academy?
The aim of Karp Academy is to help people catch more carp and to solve angling conundrums and to help people reach a greater potential angling destination without selling them anything, without plugging anything, without any advertising, and without the anglers having to embark on convoluted, expensive or complicated routes to get to success. So it's about how to succeed in simple terms, and obviously that all sounds great in principle, but to be able to get people on board with that, you have to prove that works. So a big part of Carp Academy is me going out around the country to different venues that I've never been to before and proving that what I preach works. That's a big part of it,
Right.
because you can't ask people to invest in a thought process or a subscription or a platform if you're not walking the walk. So I'm mindful of the fact that in this modern media world, people who are making films need to or want to stack the odds as much in their favor as they possibly can, because time's expensive, camera crews are expensive, etc., etc. But I have avoided entirely through stacking things in my favor, because I want every film I make to be something that anybody could achieve in principle. So there's no pre-baited swims, there's no preferential treatment, there's no being allowed to use things that no one else is allowed to use, there's no fishing areas that no one else can fish in. Every session that we do, we arrive on the gate in the queue with everybody else, and then we go off with a bucket and try and find a swim. So, and that's really important to me, that it is but that obviously puts enormous pressure on me, but I quite like the challenge and I like proving that it works. And we've got, from the films that we've done in that time, we've got 100% track record. So it proves that on lakes that we've never been to, big lakes, small lakes, rock hard lakes, easier lakes, around the country. So that's not me sort of saying I'm something special or something, but it's me saying that actually carp fishing has been made to be now overcomplicated, and by stripping things back and adhering to basic principles and cornerstones, we can still go to places and extract a result. Sometimes it's hard, especially if you've never been there, but it is possible to take a few cornerstones and apply them anywhere. It's transferable knowledge. So I think that's a key part of it. So we put out 4 films, a film every week, a film every week, 4 a month, 5 a month if it's a 5-week month. And so one of those, or sometimes 2 of those, will be me doing what I just described, occasionally with a guest. So I've had Simon Scott, Dave Levy, Frank Warwick recently, and various others who have been brilliant guests. And I usually do those in the winter, because sometimes doing everything that I just said in January when the margins are frozen, it's a big enough challenge. What I just described to you is a massive, massive challenge. When you've got a camera breathing down your neck and you've never seen the lake before, it's a big, big mountain to climb. And I have to say that I haven't quite got the minerals to do that in January when there's ice on the bank as well. So I quite often at these times, I like to get a guest on board and we go fishing together. And if we don't catch, then we can, there's lots to extract in terms of conversation So
Yeah.
that's the first style of film. Second style of film we put out is, it's changed a little bit, but we do put out a lot of technical films. So we'll try and put out a film on maybe particle preparation, or how to use a throwing stick, or um, a rig that we
Oh,
like
okay.
using, or how, just general good angling practice. We put out a live Q&A every month, where we have almost like a giant Zoom call with all the members. Everyone comes in. Usually on the last Friday of the month, we sit down, open a beer, and just brainstorm stuff. So that's very popular as well. And then just recently, I've been dropping in, or I'm looking at more content. Like I've just been reading an audio version of my book, which has gone down very.
Yeah.
Put chapter 1 out last week, and I just recorded before I started talking to you on my riverside. I just started doing chapter 2. I'm going to do a couple of
Oh, okay.
podcasts with, again, while the weather's awful like this, we're going to go and have chats with Dave Lane and Oz Holness and people like that. But
Mm.
overall, the overreaching theme of the content is education and information above pure entertainment. So there's a lot of good
Yeah.
platforms out there, and they're run by people that I know, mates of mine, and they are very, very good at making incredible looking films, beautiful looking films with amazing sunrises and steaming kettles and misty lakes and the real atmospherics that you or I might sit down with a glass of
Yeah.
wine on a Sunday night and think, oh yeah, and it makes you want to go fishing. It's inspirational. Whereas our films lean more towards communicating simple information that will help people catch more carp. If
Oh,
they're entertaining along the way as well, then that's good, but we don't market ourselves as an entertainment channel.
so, given all that, I mean, I suppose another obvious question is, how do you balance that with your personal life? Bearing in mind, most people watching this go fishing for, at the weekend when they've got some time away from the family. You seem you're going to be away from your family a lot of the time. So how do you find that
Um,
balance?
Luckily, I mean, it is my job, so it's, I suppose a normal job would take me away every day until the weekend, whereas my fishing doesn't. It does obviously mean going away at night, but usually I'm going away Monday morning and I'm home Wednesday afternoon. So actually, in terms of that being a job, it's not
Oh,
too bad.
okay.
I'm always home weekends unless there's a show, or maybe we might do a Karp Academy social event or something. But generally speaking, weekends are strict family time where we do stuff. And I'm home usually Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. So yes, I am away 2, sometimes 3 nights a week,
Okay.
but my wife knows that it is literally my job. It's what pays our mortgage and puts food on the table.
Mm.
So she's brilliant about it. And you do still need to be mindful of how to balance it, because on those days that you're home, you may be writing magazine articles or doing your admin or whatever. It does expand outside the actual exercise of going
Mm.
fishing. But I manage it as best I can. But we're all busy, aren't we? And with families, it's it's a constantly moving thing to try and go outside and do football with River for 3 hours and then take him to training and then do whatever else he's doing. But yeah, I manage to make it work as best I
Yeah.
can.
Far ahead do you plan them for the academy? Have you got
Right.
does it just something you just 3 o'clock in the morning you wake up and think, oh, I've got an idea, or is this something that you've planned out?
I'm really bad for planning, and I hate setting dates and committing to things, as you probably noticed even for this. I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, just a
sorry.
little bit.
I just got like a bit of a paranoia about the commitment and dates. How I ever got married, I never know. But so sometimes, in fact, for the majority of time, I don't know where we're going to be shooting next or even who with until a few days or maybe a week beforehand. So,
Oh, wow.
and that sometimes depends on the guest. It sometimes depends on the venue. I like to. One of the problems that you have with it, Mark, is that if you let's say we were going fishing, we were planning on going to Farlow's, right? Now, let's say you were my guest and we were going
Yeah.
to Farlow's, and we had booked and arranged it with Farlow's 2 months ago, and we were going to turn up on the 19th of January. I don't know if Farlow's is the best example, but anyway, if once word gets out, which it always does, in the shop or through bailiff teams, once people know you're coming, they go fishing on that date. It's absolutely incredible. And I've seen it happen
Wow.
so many times where we've turned up fishing and the bailiffs are saying, we've never seen so many people. Carp anglers are nosy by nature, and if they know there's some filming going on down the lake, then they will go and fish at the same time, see what's going on and so on. So, and it's happened to me so many times, and it makes your life a lot harder when you're trying to make a film, because if you need to move swims and you can't, or just added pressure is not always, so
Yeah.
whilst I go, and we do our films on we go to plenty of busy complexes and so on, I don't want it to be worse than it would be normally. So in terms of planning, quite often I'll just do it at the last minute. I'll ring a lake and I'll say, look, can we come on Monday? Can you not tell tell the world or put it on social media until after we're done? So partly that is like a defense mechanism, partly because I don't like committing to dates, and partly because I'm naturally a little bit disorganized. So in answer to your question, I don't tend to work very far ahead. However, I've got a brilliant right-hand man called Chris, who does my camera work and my editing. And between us, we are trying to get a bit better so that we've got more in the can in case, in our first year that we had, the first spring that we were up and running, I injured myself lifting something really heavy, and I couldn't actually go fishing for 2 or 3 weeks. So I ended up doing some armchair presentations, which are on the platform. And now I'm more mindful of the fact, if I fall out of a tree or if anything happens, it would be more sensible to get a month or two ahead. So that's another reason why I'm bringing these other types of content into the mix with the audio book and the podcast type formats, and also trying to just get a session or two in the can. So I don't work far ahead, but I'm trying to get better at it is the answer.
Right. Okay. And you mentioned as well that one of the key things with the academy is that you're not there to sell product. So again, was that a conscious decision? Did you decide that I don't want to be, permanently with one brand and have to push those items? And does that give you a better range of angling, so to speak, because you can use whatever products, I suppose, suit the occasion?
I have had a loose tie-up with Thinking Anglers for the last few years, and I've been using Sticky since 2013. But notwithstanding those things, I don't. If we do a rig sequence, then I might say I'm using this size 8 curve point, but there's lots of different types on the market which are the same shape. Just choose one that you like. I go out of my way not to. I hate plugging stuff, and I hate being plugged too. So that the whole element of that, you might see me if I'm catapulting out some boilies, you might see blurred out in the background that it's a bag of krill or something, but I'm never saying these are krill boilies, they're brilliant, you need to get on them, or any of that rubbish. It's very subtle and subliminal, partly because I think the whole industry per se is overselling, over marketing, over shouting. It's just too much. And I think I turned off to it a long time ago, and I think probably a lot of the more discerning viewers do likewise. So because we're completely independent, so we're not in bed with any particular companies that dictate our content or what they want on our content. So we do tackle reviews. That's another one of the sections of content that we do. And it means that I can do everything as I want to do it, completely honestly and with integrity. And if something isn't a 5-star rating, then I can say why it isn't, and be comfortable with that. And I think the industry just generally is just lacking a little bit of that. It's just, you know, integrity to me has always been important, and I wouldn't recommend something to people just because I've been sent it for free. In fact, usually I say to people, can I buy it off you? Maybe we can come to an arrangement where I can buy it at trade or cover your cost. Rather, you know, I don't want to be sent free stuff and then feel like I'm beholden to giving them a good review or something. You know, I'm not into that at all. So, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, absolutely. And so you're not in the habit then of pushing a rig that's got 6 different components because they'll all make sales at the warehouse kind of thing. It's which, as you say, that is something that the industry does do. I mean, the films that are out there, the social media, you can clearly see that. I think I saw somewhere the other day somebody's brought out one of these shot on the hook shots that now looks like a piece of coloured yellow, like a piece of corn. I mean, I mean, it's pushing an agenda. So, okay, that's an interesting thing about the Academy and a good insight for people who are not aware of it. So just while we're talking about it now, so it's an online platform that is it subscription-based?
Yeah, so we're a subscription-based platform. We put out independent content every single week. We've got about 150 plus films in our library now, and we also we have an app so people can watch content offline anywhere in the world, even without a connection. They can, but you can also you can Chromecast it to your smart TV and watch it indoors. You can listen to the audio book while you're driving in the car. So it's very accessible. And it's what would I say about it? It's there's a lot of content there, but it's split into different categories. So we've got our session films, but we also have a technical library. So everything is put into a section within the app or within the website, whichever you choose to use. So you can go into a technical section, you can go into the live film section, you can go back and review all of the live Q&As from the beginning. We also have a library called Success Packs, and our Success Packs is a dedicated technical library which is all about troubleshooting. It could be something like how to use wrapping sticks correctly and how to get the best out of them, because that's actually there's a lot to the correct use just of that one piece of tackle. There's films on how to sharpen your hooks correctly. There's films on, there's a very in-depth film on watercraft and the tiny little subtle signs that you should be looking for that most people miss.
I was going to say watercraft. That's just, you just put it into Facebook group now, don't you? Ask how many wraps do I need from bank 3?
Exactly. And the great thing is that for anglers that want to think outside the box or fish outside the box, there's never been a better time to reverse the trend and go against the trend, because right now the vast majority of people are fishing very, very similarly to each other. On busy lakes, they're fishing the same spots as each other. So it's kind of like the information is cross-fertilized. What rig was that catch made on? What spot was it made on? What was he using? And then that becomes the way that the fishing is then applied on that lake for X period of time. And it just simply means that if you are prepared to come right out, detach yourself from the trends, then I was just been writing an article for Total Carp this afternoon, and it was about your strengths as an angler. Can you pick out 7 or 8 strengths and write about why they're important to you? And one of the ones that I've just written about was just simply titled bottom baits. And so I've just been writing a few hundred words on why I think that is an edge. And very basically, it's every brown boilie laying on the bottom of the lake, and carp see these day in, day out on every lake, can be eaten without anything bad happening at all. So the carp are eating them all the time. And we very, very conveniently mark every single bait that is attached to something sharp by making it buoyant, visual, and loaded with chemicals, sometimes all three at the same time. And well, that's very kind that we do that for
Yeah.
the carp, because they don't want to get caught, and they're doing their best not to get caught. And we've all been doing the same thing. Actually, in the audio book that I just chapter that I was just recording before we started chatting, Mark, it was set, that particular part of the book was from 2004. And I was just writing about how I'd seen this carp roll on this bar on this very understocked lake. There was a 10 carp in the whole lake, and I saw a fish roll, and I wrote in my diary in the audio book that I cast 2 yellow pop-ups out there, which at the time was quite sort of not cutting edge, but and so that was 21 years ago. So a lot of the carp in a lot of the lakes right now that are swimming around out there are less old than that. So for their entire lifetime, they've had bright pop-ups cast out for their whole lives. No wonder, yes, they do work, but when you think that 95% of all anglers are doing something to make their hook bait different from everything else that the carp are comfortably eating, you have to wonder if really that is the most effective way. If we were trying to catch deer in the woods to subsist from, then I think we'd be starting to go hungry. And you would have to move where the trap was, camouflage it a different way, and put it in a different part of the wood from where everyone else was setting their traps in order to get the deer to feed your family. So I always think of it like that. You're trying to trap a wild animal, and something that's doing its level best not to get caught. So yeah, bottom baits have become a massive part of my fishing for the last 6 years. Small hooks as well. In fact, it is something that I do sometimes apologize for on the films that we make in Karp Academy, because every time we go to a new lake, a new venue, a new challenge, I don't go, right, for this trip, we're going to be using such and such a rig, and I've got these new baits to try and all of that, because that just creates a confusing situation for me, for the viewer, when actually I'd say, well, this is what we normally use. My rig is made of 2 components, a hook link and a hook, 2 components. That's it. When you think, as you said, a lot of rigs are made of 6 components. 2 components, we're going to use a bait out of the bag on the hair. Let's see if it works. And as I said, you should. I'm always wary of saying things like that, because it means the next time you go out, you probably will blank. But the success record that we've had making films since summer 2022 has been right up there wherever we've gone. So there have been times where we've used a bait spoon and a bit of particle, in certain situations. But moreover, the simple boilie fishing tactics have worked for us everywhere. So I don't want to be in a situation, as I said, where I'm saying, right, this week we're going to use such and such a rig. Let's just use the simple tactics and see if they work. And they do, and they do, and they do. So we keep using them.
Do you think, you said it at the start as well, one of the comments you made about, you're saying, you don't see yourself as a brilliant sort of angler, but what do you think separates the good anglers from exceptional anglers? Is there such a thing as an exceptional angler?
There's definitely, of course there are. And I can only say that because over many decades I've been fortunate enough to fish with just about all of them at some point. So I've been very lucky insofar as I can see, some of the really good guys at work, and I'm like a sponge in their presence, because I always think I'm always willing to learn. And in fact, you can learn and pick stuff up from anybody. I go out on tutorials with people that might have been fishing a year or two, and they have a certain way of doing something. I think, oh, that's pretty neat. So if you've got an open mind, the problem is that a pervading mindset among carp anglers is very often one that is, well, I've been fishing for 30 years. What could he teach me? And now if you've got that sort of mindset, which a lot of anglers do have out of this some sort of arrogance, then you've closed yourself off to anything that could come in, and then you're not going to improve. And actually, some of the most some of the anglers that really need help that I have been out with are the ones that have just been doing it for so long and thought they had mastered it that they've just got stale, and actually they're pretty, they need help, you know, a lot of them. So I think being aware that we all need to improve, that learning is a good thing. Everybody's got something to say of value. If not everybody actually, but a lot of people have. If you're willing to give them a listen, that's a vital part of it. So, what was the question? I've gone off on a tangent, haven't I?
What separates
Yeah.
a good angler from an exceptional, rather than just what from an angler to a good angler? What's a good angler to an exceptional?
Again, this is something that's fairly fresh in my mind because I've just been writing about it. Is that the one common denominator that every single very effective angler I've ever seen has, the one thing they all have is that they are all ardent students of the water. By that I mean they never switch off from looking and watching. I'm talking about the guys who are at the top of their game, whether they're known or unknown. There's loads of unknown anglers. I think when people hear this, they think, oh, you're just talking about Dave Lane or whoever. But there's lots of anglers out there that are just as good as anybody you can think of who have never been in print or on a video or anything. They're just local legends, some of them, you know. So, but the point is that whoever it is, whether they're known or unknown, the one thing they will all have in common is they all burn optical calories to the maximum effect that they can. So if to try and sort of not paraphrase that, but put that in a nutshell, I'm talking about a way of measuring how hard and intensely we're looking. So many years ago, many times people have said to me over the years, it's all right for you to say, keep looking until you see something show. But on my lake, they never show at all. Now, I don't think I've never been to a lake where fish never show anywhere in the world. They might be showing at 3 a.m. and there might only be 2 shows, but there will always be something. So I then reasoned that these people, a lot of people, are just simply not looking hard enough because they don't understand how hard they need to look. So I had to come up with a way of explaining it to my tutorial clients, or in print or on Karp Academy or wherever, the art of looking. So how do you explain that and quantify it in a way that's easy to understand? And I thought, well, the best way of getting it across is so say, for example, you were going to drive to John O'Groats tonight, right? By the time you get there, you're going to be knackered. Why are you knackered? You're only sat in a chair. You're not doing anything physical. You're knackered because you're using these and you're concentrating for hours. So if the process of doing that is tiring you, then it's burning some sort of fuel or energy. So I call it eye energy. Optical calories. So the way that I measure it is that if you are going to go to a lake and study the lake intensely for 1 hour, then you're going to burn 100 optical calories. All right. Now, let's take Joe Average. I don't mean that in a condescending kind of way, but your average Joe, your average guy.
Yeah.
Now, if Mr. Average is out there, I'm thinking that with everything that goes on in the world now, particularly with social media and Facebook and doom scrolling and everything that goes with it, I think that probably let's say that Joe Average is going to spend 2 hours of given day staring super fixatedly and concentrating on what is in front of him. Right now, most of them won't even be near that 2 hours, unfortunately, because actually 2 hours of concentrated, solid, unbroken looking is quite demanding. Now, if we go back to what I said earlier, that the one common denominator that separates the really good from the not quite as good is visual acuity, is that ability to concentrate and zone in. If that's the one thing that That is the common denominator. Then what would we have at the other end of the scale from one of those guys? Let's say in the main part of the season when the clocks have changed, let's say it's light from 6 a.m. and it's dark at 8 p.m. So we've got 14 hours of daylight. Now, at that time of year, which would probably be April, I guess, 6 a.m., 8 p.m., something like that. But anyway, let's say that someone who's really on top of their game, they are going to be burning in excess of 1,400 OCs. Now, if you've got Joe average on 200, which we know he probably isn't even on that, and you've got someone whose worth is salt on 1,400, an absolute gulf has opened up between them. And this is the gulf that separates the haves from the have-nots. It genuinely is.
Right.
Then you of course, you need to be able to react to what you've seen and everything else that goes with it. But it all starts with that information and what you see and what you do with it. So going back to what I said when you said like what really makes a difference, that is it. It's not a secret rig. It's not being sponsored for bait. It's not any of that. It's not having a $5,000 bait boat. It's what you. The more you look, the more you will learn. The more you learn, the more you will catch. It always comes down to that. And I've been doing it so long, I can promise you that is what it comes down to. And I love it because that isn't something you can go and buy over the counter in the shop in a brown paper bag for 50 quid and walk out with. That's something that you have to do. And that's why it will always be an edge. And it's even more of an edge, as I said, nowadays, because people put the rods out and they're straight on their phone. So the greatest skill you can possibly have as an angler is being eroded down to nothing. And it means for people like me who I will just make sure I go on my phone when it's dark, or obviously we all have urgent things we might have to do, but generally my phone is out the way and I'm zoned in on what I'm doing. And that is becoming more and more and more and more of an edge, not just for me, but for other practitioners of the art, which is watercraft and looking.
When I had a conversation with Dave Levy, he actually set a challenge by saying if you put your phone down for an hour, sit at the front of the swim with a brew and literally just watch the water. Don't worry about your phone or what's going on other than what's in front of you. And he said you can almost guarantee, a bit like you were saying, you will see things. You'll see things that you never expected to see. And as you've just said, if you times that then by 14, you can't not see things. But it's interesting because, so you're saying like, makes an exceptional angler is watercraft. It's not for the fact that they get loads of free bait there.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, it's the thing that always makes me laugh actually is that people have this, people never want to have accountability in angling. So if the reason that they're not catching as many as the next bloke or someone that they've seen on social media or something, then they will always look for a reason that is absolving them of blame. And that might be, well, he gets free bait, well, he gets to fish 2 nights a week or whatever it is. Actually, everybody who is in the position of being sponsored had to actually catch fish and prove their worth before they got sponsored, quite clearly, because it would be like, do they really think someone like Lewis Hamilton just got given an F1 car? Oh, let's see if you're any good at this. Like, you have to prove you're really good at something before anyone will sponsor you. So when I hear people say that, I just think, come on, you're just being ridiculous. And you need to look closer to home as for reasons why perhaps you're not catching the fish that you want to be catching. And they are usually the fact that you don't want to put in the effort that is required. And I'm not saying if you're going to go fishing, you've got to put in loads of effort, and you've got to move to the other end of the lake, or you've got to move in the rain, or you've got to be up listening at 3 a.m, because they are all optional. A lot of people go carp fishing. That's the last thing they want to do. They want to crack open a beer, get the cob going, and absolutely, that's brilliant. I would never, ever, ever knock that. But if you do all those things, get the cob going and crack open a Stella and roll a smoke and whatever, and then you see the fish moving at the other end of the lake and you go, I can't be asked to move. And then you complain and say, actually, the reason I didn't catch was because matey was spodding too much. Just be accountable. Like, if you want to go fishing and not put the effort in and just enjoy yourself, then brilliant. But you have to accept that you're not going to get those stratospheric results. Well, you might every now and again get lucky because that's what happens, but you're not going to get consistent. That's for sure.
Yeah. So when you talk, do you include in the watercraft bracket? Would you include weather conditions? Pressure, moon phases, and all that, or is that not something you kind of buy into? Or
Well, I mean, weather definitely has a massive. It's the biggest. I was going to say it's the biggest overriding influence, but it's actually not. Angling pressure is, because we've seen angling pressure now have a greater impact on the location or where the carp want to be than weather used to. So that proves that angling pressure is the most powerful. But weather does play a huge part. It's a massive influence. And moon phases as well. There's absolutely no question. A friend of mine, Joe Morgan, used to tell me about moon phases for many, many years, and he would sometimes say, "Well, that fish you caught from what date did you catch it?" I'd tell him. He'd go, "Oh, did you have it at 8:15 or something?" I'd say, "Yeah." He'd go, "Yeah, that was right on the peak time of the moon that day." Or and it was only, I never used to pay much attention to the moon purely because I could only fish when I could fish. But once I started taking heed of what Joe was saying, and I thought, do you know what? I'm going to spend a year where I plan, once I became self-employed, I thought all of my own fishing trips I'm going to do in accordance with the moon. And and I saw some really good results as a result. But what I would say is that the moon plays a massive part in the productivity of some lakes and less so on others. And I've seen on other lakes, I have seen where it can almost have a negative effect. So the only way that I know that the moon is playing a really big part is because of the diaries that I've kept, and I won't mention them on here because their bookings will peak around the moons, but there are a couple of really well-known mainstream circuit waters out there that only do their fish pretty much, certainly through the winter months, they will only do their fish on the moon phases. And when you go back through their Facebook catch reports and you tally it up with a good moon app, you can see that it's there. And in fact, one of them in particular, I wouldn't even think of going to. If you look at the catch reports, you think, oh, it's been fishing well, we'll go down there. Actually, those when you drill down into it, they come out on the full moon or the new moon. And anything in between has, in this particular lake that I'm talking about, which is very famous, anything in between is either non-existent or very scant. So moons definitely plays a part. We've actually did do a success pack. Sorry, Mark. One of the films we've done, a short little film on understanding moon phases, is on the platform because it does play a part.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's really interesting. That's definitely one for people to get subscribed and have a look at. You're talking about one of the biggest issues was pressure on waters. That's kind of changed carp fishing. Is that where you have to have a sort of strong mental approach then to do things differently? Do you think?
You need to have a strong mental approach in terms of, if you're short fused and you're going to suddenly see red as soon as someone's spom lands in your swim or a bait boat comes across, then you're not going to find the experience very enjoyable. So you have to because we are all there for enjoyment ultimately. So you have to recalibrate
Yeah.
yourself and soften yourself a little bit and think, you know what, it is a day ticket water. I've got someone fishing 3 wraps either side of me. It's pointless getting too vexed. I remember when I used to fish Bayswater day ticket lake, the swims were so tight that the first few times I fished it, I when it came to dusk and everyone was redoing their rods, I'd sit at the front of my swim and get really vexed by how close people were landing. And after a while, I learned that when it came to people that time of day where people were redoing their rods, I would just go in the bivvy for a little, almost put the door down. I didn't want to see it. So you do have to recalibrate your outlook for busy lakes sometimes. And in terms of technical appreciation as well. So if there is, what you tend to find is that you get styles of angling on particular lakes which are they've ultimately evolved from somebody doing really well on such a thing. So if you've seen this on syndicates in particular, very, very often where information is shared in a very fertile way, you will get someone who does really well on plastic corn over beds of hemp and maize, for example. And that then becomes de rigueur, the standardized approach for a period of time. And everybody fishes that way because Graham do you see how many Graham caught and he's still catching well? And I've been on both sides of this. You can be on the inside looking out where you are one of the people that's kind of trapped into the fashionable way of fishing a lake because it's worked so incredibly well, until you'll get a new member turn up. The new members turn up. This guy turns up. He goes over there in the corner, and then the next morning the bailiff comes around and says that new guy Mike, he had 4 last night. You're like, what? And then everyone starts paying attention to Mike, who's maybe using a throwing stick and 10 millers, for example, or whatever it is. Then everyone will fish like him, and that will be the going trend on the lake until someone else comes along and resets it. And you see this a lot. So I'm always keen to know what is being applied on any lake that I'm going to, and then avoiding it like the plague. So when I turn up and I might subtly or respectfully ask a few questions on what people are doing, it's not because the last thing I want to do is do that. But I do like to know what the fish are being exposed to, or usually overexposed to, so that I can then think, right, well, what is the complete opposite of that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting approach as well. And I bet people get all excited because what Adam Penning's asking me what I do, and look, he's gone and caught one. So, there's obviously the pressure on the waters and stuff, and you've got to have a different mindset. Now, what's your feeling about tech? So, I've asked everybody the same sort of thing, really, in terms of, bait boats and that, and also, but do you feel that have rigs evolved too much? Are we trying too hard with rigs, do you think? I know you said about before, keep simple hair rig, bottom bait. But yeah, do you think with technology, you talk about throwing sticks? I mean, I can't remember the last time I saw someone using one, even a catapult. Everything has to be spotted now, but bait boats do seem to be quite sort of prolific as well.
In terms of rigs, I think that there's 2 things going on. There's unquestionably companies that are over marketing rigs stroke products to get more sales, and they have become unnecessarily overcomplicated. There's no question about that in my mind. But also the anglers are fallible themselves, because when the times are hard and they're not catching, the first thing that they will usually blame is the rig or the bait. So carp anglers are quite unique in terms of when the fishing's really hard, they will usually add something to the rig, to like some shrink tube or an extra swivel or a shot on the point or whatever it is, when in actual fact, it's an observation I made fairly recently that when fishing becomes hard in any other species pursuit, notably if you use fly fishing or sea fishing as an example, so you're fishing for fish there that have never been caught before for obvious reasons. Now, if you talk to a good fly angler, and I have done, or to good sea anglers, I have done, then when it's hard, the first thing they do is find things down. They will use a smaller bait, they will use a smaller hook, they will use a thinner leader, whereas carp anglers do the opposite. And that's something that, this time of year when I'm carp fishing, the biggest hook I'm using is a size 8. And quite often I'm using a size 10 or even a size 12. It's just something,
Really?
it's just something that I've learned from my days at Drennan, rubbing shoulders with match anglers, the Team England boys and so on. Having the ability in your locker to drop down tackle to get extra bites is a real big asset, and it's something that plays a big part in my carp fishing at this time of year.
Would you do that with leads as well?
In some situations, yes, I would. Particularly if I'm casting at fish, not just lead size, but lead shape. So something like a zip tournament style, if I'm casting at fish, something like that in an ounce and a half is going to go in like an absolute whisper because it's tapered and pointed, as opposed to something that's bulbous and bulky. So if it's shallow water and there's not much weed about and the fish are flighty, then that's certainly that will be consideration. But yeah, going back to, one of the big edges that that I would say at the moment isn't just bottom baits, but it's small hooks. All of the carp I've caught this year, just think that's right. I don't like making sweeping statements. All the carp I can think of this year have been on size 8 hooks. And because we've been so over marketed to, and we've all ended up using bigger and bigger hooks, a size 8 looks absolutely tiny now. Whereas it used to be, you think like the fishing we used to do, you've been around long enough, size 8 was a standard size hook.
Yeah.
Now I
Yeah.
would think that if anyone in the tackle shop game was on here, they would be saying, yeah, it's our slowest selling hook. And not only that, at the other end of the scale, the size 4s have got bigger and bigger, and they're actually, I would go as far as to say that a lot of the size 4s now are like what we would have called size 2s. So
Definitely.
when you think that there's obviously certain times where carp, excuse me, are feeding hard, they're active, they're up for it, and they get caught. But what about all the other times when the fishing is hard? That is a massive giant hook that is then attached to a clunking swivel going to be the best way of catching a fish that is carefully filter feeding and doing its best not to get caught. And very often, when I fish up at Bluebell and busy places like that, you talk to someone and say, oh, have you caught anything? No, I lost 2. Or yeah, I caught 1, and you'll go down and help them deal with it, and it's just caught in the edge. And they're always on these great big things where they've just nicked the fish in the edge of the lip because the fish has realised at the last moment that it's dangerous and it's heavy and it's metallic, and they've tried to spit it, and you've either not got a good hook hold or you haven't got a hook hold at all. Whereas the fish, like just using this year as an example, the size 8 hooks that I'm using, even on 4-inch hook links, it's an inch inside the mouth. And it takes a lot of getting out, I mean, how often you think, people listening to this, how often do you see a hook an inch or more inside the mouth? If unless they're doing similar to what I'm doing, they're not. You're just getting them in the scissors or just on the edge, so it shows me that by using a softer hook link and a much smaller hook and a bottom bait, it's all going in there and it's staying in there for a fraction of a second longer because it's harder to feel what's going on than a great big clunky thing, which is, and it's spat in a split second and it's gone, and it might just nick on the way out. The longer your rig spends inside the mouth of the fish, the more chance you have of gaining a good, solid, secure hook hold.
Yeah.
And the more refined and subtle your rig is, the longer it is going to be in there, especially when they're used to coming across these massive contraptions day in and day out. A size 8, it's just like they will notice it, but they won't notice it half as quick as those bloody great things that most people are using.
Yeah, that's again an interesting observation, isn't it? Because I mean, I see just on the forums, and it does surprise me that most people's go-to hook size is a
Yeah,
4.
and they're big
You
boys.
know, and I mean, yeah, and they are big 4s. Yeah, I mean, I don't even use those when I'm abroad. I don't. I haven't had the need. I fish with 6s here. Sometimes I'll only use an 8 if I'm sort of floater fishing, but yeah, it's a really interesting point. But yeah,
Just
so
sorry
the
to
other
interrupt,
part of
Mark.
that was
Sorry to interrupt, but just why
yeah,
you mention it there about going abroad, carp fishing abroad has got harder and harder and harder for lots of different reasons. But now, if you talk to groups of people that have just been on a European trip, they're coming back and more than half of them not caught anything. It's really hard for a lot of people. And that's an hour-long conversation in itself. But one of the things that people can't help but do when they go to France is get all agricultural. So the hooks get even bigger, the baits get even
yeah,
bigger, everything gets, because they think that these massive carp you need this tackle to catch them. Well, one of the first tutorial trips that I did, in fact, the first several, we all fished them the same way. When we went to these very pressured lakes, we fished 10 mil pop-ups on size 8 hooks and fished over boilie crumb. And I don't want to blow trumpets or anything, but I'm talking like record catches multiple times, fish up to 70 pound on these little size 8s, because the carp, again, those big French fish weren't used to dealing with it. And it's the same thing I'm talking about
yeah.
here. If you give them something they're not used to dealing with, it's going to make a big difference. And we didn't lose any. Size 8 hook is plenty big enough for landing a massive carp.
I totally agree with you. And it is an interesting thing. And again, I think, and going back to another point you've already made, the one thing that everybody does when they go to these venues in France as well is they just follow what everyone else has done.
Yeah.
You know,
Not only
because
that, but what has everybody else done? What everybody else has done is what the friendly bailiff has told them on Saturday morning when it's shaped right. You need one on Pierre's bar at 14 wraps. You need one under the willow there. The house bait is the going bait. And it's like the bailiffs they're doing it in good faith because they want their clients to catch. But if everybody is getting given that same information, really, is it really going to be the best way to try and catch something that's doing its level best not to get caught? I don't think so.
No, I agree. And again, I think you said, pressure water is one of the biggest things that changes is the carp's behaviour, isn't it? The carp will behave in a different way on a pressured water. But again, I think that's probably this is a conversation that maybe for another time. It's a whole different subject, isn't it?
It is, mate. Yeah.
So did you? Yeah, going back to the original bait boats. Is it cheating?
So when I started fishing at Bluebell, I fished the first couple of years up there without a bait boat, and there was certainly times where not having one cost me. Notably, on, say, for example, Kingfisher Lake, if you got a bite from a tench at 4 a.m. in June when it's misty and it's flat calm, it's dead quiet, and the fish are rolling and fizzing, and you catch a tench and you have to get that rig back in position and you cast it, very often that'll be the end of it. You won't get another chance. The fish will move. So I realised that it was costing me not having one, but I held on. I had a conversation with Joe Morgan about it probably 2 years ago, and I said I was already quite aware that bait boats are used by just about everybody, and the angling public largely has no idea that Simon Scott uses one, Terry Hearn uses one, Dave Lane uses one, Dave Levy uses. Everybody uses them. literally Ed Lewis Reed, who I was out with last week, everybody has got and will use a bait boat. Even the most unlikely people. The Burfield Common's been caught more on a bait boat than any other way, I should think. So I rang up Joe Morgan and I said, Joe, we are the last two in the game out of everyone that haven't got a bait boat. And he replied to me by saying, I've had one for 2 years. And I went, oh, right. Okay. So then I thought,
Brilliant.
Well, it's kind of like, let's say we're all professional carpenters and there is a really good plane for shaving wood. That is the latest thing on the street. And everyone who's using it and they're getting really good results on their planed doors, and I'm still trying to do it the old-fashioned way when actually I could make it a bit easier for myself. So I thought there are certain situations where I cannot do it without a bait boat. Let's say, for example, I want to fish at 110 yards in a crosswind and I want to put down 8 grains of sweet corn on this little clay crater. There's no, other than swimming it out, there's no way I could do it. So I thought, I'm going to get a bait boat. I've got a little Ridge Monkey one. It's not got a sonar or a deeper or GPS or anything. It's just got a trap door that opens. And I've used that occasionally. I have caught some fish on it. I had it with, we recently went up to Cromwell Lake in Newark and did a film there where you can use bait boats. And I went there and I had the bait boat and it stayed in the van for the entirety of the trip. We fished from the bank with a catapult and caught more than just about anybody else on there while they were all using bait boats. So I could have just thought, do you know what? They're allowed on here. I'm going to get the bait boat out of the van and use it. But I'm just using that as an example to illustrate that even when I've got one at my disposal, I'm still very reluctant to use it. But again, as I said, I've come round to the thinking that there are certain situations where it is an asset. I am a professional angler. I've now got one. And I can't remember the last time I used it, Mark. I can't. But if I was out tomorrow and I was in a situation they were allowed, and I thought actually the only way I can get that tiny little bag of maggots on the end of there is with a bait boat, then I will reach for it.
You'll use it. That's a fair comment. So what in terms of the tackle that you use, I presume, is it standard kit you don't use? Are you a fan of the short rods? Do you not stick with your 12-footers? Do you use bigger, or is it just depends on the whole angling situation?
They're a little bit of a pet hate of mine, short rods. I think they're the most unnecessary fashion and basically they're a pet hate of mine because 2 reasons. Carp rods have evolved over the last 6 decades to become 12 foot for very good reason. They used to be a lot shorter, and they've arrived at 12 foot, and then they started to become shorter again. And it was only they didn't become shorter in what I was using. I just stuck with my 12 footers, although I have always carried a 6-foot rod for really tight situations under overhangs. But when this fashion started on 10-foot rods and even shorter, I had numerous clients come out with me who came along with their nice, shiny, new, short, fashionable rods. And what I can say is that if you have bought into the short rod fashion and you fish a variety of waters, sooner or later they will cost you. They will cost you either in terms of not being able to get a bait where you need it to get, or, and I've seen this as well, they will cost you in terms of needing to put leverage on a fish that's stuck in weed and it's 60 yards out and you're stood there with a stump of a rod. I've seen that happen as well. I've seen it happen causing line lay issues. I've just seen them cause problems and disadvantages. If you were fishing a lake where you were just going to fish one lake for the rest of your days and it was a tiny little lake and you were always fishing in close and there was no weed, then crack on. But for anything, for the wide variety, the wide ranging gamut of carp fishing, 12-foot, 3¼ pound test curve rod is what you need, and that will do just about everything you ask of it.
Well, I won't mention my 9-footers.
No,
then.
don't. Sooner or later, they'll cost you, unfortunately, and when they do, you'll remember this.
Yeah, well, I won't say that they have then either.
Brilliant.
So, let's just talk. So, obviously, you've well, we've been talking. You've been saying that you were doing your audio book now, and you're writing articles for one of the magazines and stuff. You've always. When did the writing thing sort of kick on in terms of a book? Was that a natural progression of what you do, or was that again something that almost like how you got into the industry, just wasn't meant to happen, but just did?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, principally that actually. It was for a long, long time. I was not intending to do one simply because when I compared what I had caught compared to the legends who were writing books, I thought, well, I just haven't got the fish to populate a book at the time. And then I would talk to a couple of mates, and people like Chilcott would say to me, it doesn't matter. You've got some stories that need to be told that even aren't necessarily to do with fishing that would make a brilliant book. And I thought about that, and so when I did eventually get round to writing it, the book was a mixture of carp stories and real life disasters and stories that we can all relate to, women and mothers-in-law and all crazy jobs, and so yeah, just all sorts of stuff going on. But so yeah, I did eventually decide to write. It took a long time because, again, I don't like deadlines or commitment. So I started the process probably in about, I don't know, 2012, maybe something like that, and it didn't actually get launched until 2019, was it? Something like that, I think. So, but it was good. It was a good way to write it because it meant that, because I wasn't, most carp anglers, when they write a book, they go away for the winter months and they write it and it's done. They just don't go
Right.
fishing for 3 months, and you get your nose to the grindstone and you get it done. But because I didn't do that, and I did it over so many years, I would do a bit, then I'd put it up on the shelf, then I'd get it down 2 months later, and so I was constantly in a process of redesign and tweaking and polishing, and so it became something very much more than you could ever do over a course of a winter.
Right. Okay.
So it's a big old. It weighs over 2 kilos, and it's 570 something pages. And I made it I wasn't intending to get this out, but it's next to me because I was just doing the audio book. But I did it in a format that was very different to other books. So I did it in with black paper and white ink, and I did it. If you come to throughout the book, I've got, these are my diary extracts. So I keep diaries avidly on the bank, and I thought if I could actually put those into the story, then it transports the reader into the actual moment, whereas a book is obviously written in retrospect. A diary is only barely so. It's there in the moment. So I thought, well, if I can change the way the book looks, change how it feels. I took chronology out of it, so it skips around different time zones, but keeps coming back to the same theme, because it's quite an oversaturated marketplace, the book, carp books, and I thought I want to do enough things in it to make it completely different. So yeah, that's what I did, and because it took so long to do it, it came out sufficiently different to everybody else's. And I'm just finishing off volume 2, which hopefully will be out this year. So going back to your question,
fantastic.
the writing is just being a naturally organic thing that just, I wouldn't say I wasn't, I think if you do writing for 25, 30 years, eventually you couldn't not become reasonably adept at it. So I find it quite easy. the only O level that I got at school was English, so I always had a little bit of a flair for words and writing. So
Yeah, yeah.
and I enjoy it. I like writing, so yeah, it's something that takes up because there's only 2 magazines left, but I write for both of those, and obviously I'm writing a book, and so a lot of time spent writing actually, but I find it quite easy, so it's good.
There's 3 magazines. We're still there.
2 paper magazines, I meant to say. Sorry,
Oh,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
paper. Yeah,
sorry, yeah,
paper. I'll
sorry,
forgive
yes,
you on
3,
that
yeah,
one.
yes.
It's it's actually this issue, the January issue, will be our 10-year issue.
Congratulations,
That's
that's
how long we've
amazing! Wow,
and we've put out a monthly magazine online for the last 10 years.
that's a big deal.
Never missed. Yeah, it's been interesting. I'm not saying every issue's been great, but but we put one out. But no, and we've given a platform to a lot of people who are just average anglers. That was the whole intention of doing it. But obviously, the likes of yourself and other the sort of the celebrity anglers, the pro anglers have always supported us really well, and for that we've always been sort of thankful as well. So yeah, so we've just spoke about the writing. In terms of your filming, is all the filming that you do on the bank now for the Karp Academy? It's not for you like your own personal YouTube and anything like that.
I mean, I do make films for Sticky and Thinking Anglers, and
Lovely.
but yeah, I mean, all of my own angling, almost all of it is videographed. It's
Yeah.
so when I go and do a session on my own, I take the camcorder and do a little bit of a diary there, and then collate them all together into a film at some point down the line.
Right.
So yeah, there's usually a camera around somewhere. Every now and again, I think, do you know what? I'm just going to turn everything off, and but sometimes, or quite often, I just think, oh, the lake looks lovely today, or the kingfisher's coming past a lot, or something. I think, oh, I'm just going to film it, because so that it's not lost. But yeah, usually there's a camera about, but it's something that um, I wouldn't say I thrive on it, but I find it it doesn't detract from what I do and what I love. So I'm very lucky that I've been exposed to carp fishing for so long, or overexposed, you might say, in some cases. But my passion for it and my enthusiasm for it has never dwindled, and I feel very lucky to be able to say that, because there are people in the game who are trapped in it and carry on doing it, and their passion's gone. They would rather be watching Liverpool play or whatever it is. But so I'm lucky. But I think the only reason for that is that I've never become sizist. So if you and I were going out fishing tomorrow for doubles, I would still not get any sleep tonight thinking about it. I'd be really excited. And if I get even a 17-pound carp on the mat, I look at it and I think that's quite a big fish. It needs 2 hands to pick it up. And so if you
Yeah.
become really preoccupied with the size of fish, and you only want to catch big fish, then nobody is catching big fish all the time. They're obviously punctuated quite frequently by modest fish and even small fish. So if during those periods you look in your landing net and your first sense is one of disappointment, and sometimes those phases can go on for a long time because, like I say, big fish you're not catching them all the time, then if your overwhelming takeaway from your experience is a deflated or disappointed one, then I think that probably you haven't got long perhaps left in carp fishing to go, and you're just grinding through it. Whereas anything that goes in my net, I'm really pleased with. I love it. So that means I'm never disappointed. And if someone walks around the corner and sees me holding a 14-pound lovely looking mirror up for the camera, and they think, oh, I have had people say, well, what are you photographing that for? And I've had people, very often I'll talk to people, and even recently they'll say, oh yeah, I had one last night, it was only 27. I was like, what do you only 20. That to me is that's a big carp, 27 pound,
Yeah,
and they just have
yeah.
this sort of disparaging negative outlook unless it is significantly big, only such and such a weight. And because I've never become like that, I think is why hopefully my carp fishing candle will burn longer and keep burning.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, I mean, we're almost at the point now where £40 carp are insignificant. You know, it's
God.
kind of getting ridiculous. The amount of people that
Ah,
maybe not so much UK, but certainly France. I get asked a lot. I get messages from people saying, "I'm going over to France. Um, can you a runs water with a chance of a 60?" I mean,
yeah,
yeah, right,
yeah,
because that exists.
yeah.
You know, but I think it's kind of quite sad. What do you think about etiquette nowadays? Bankside etiquette. I mean, um, should the older should not the older angler, but the anglers that have been doing this a long time, should they be influencing the younger anglers in terms of etiquette as well as watercraft? You know, like um, we used to have, you know, etiquette was a big thing in when I was, you know, even 25 years ago, but it just seems to be non-existent now. It's like almost everyone's there just to catch at all costs, and it doesn't matter if you piss the bloke off next to you or whatever, or you want to have an argument with a guy across because you know you're casting over halfway across the lake. Do you sort of you fish the day tickets? Do you sort of see that as an issue?
Yeah, I think etiquette can manifest in many different forms, sometimes as in the sort of instances that you just described, but also just in general thoughtlessness. So, for example, where we were fishing recently, there was someone on the opposite bank, albeit nearly 200 yards away, who had the most million power candle power torch or whatever in the front of his swim,
Yeah.
and it was facing out onto his rods and the frontage of his swim, and therefore the rest of the lake. And I guess
Yeah.
he was doing it because he thought if he got a bite, he would needed to see what he was doing. I don't know, but people don't seem to think about other people anymore, which is part
No.
of obviously that is what etiquette is largely. So um
No.
yeah, it is an issue. I hate bright lights at night round the lake. But generally speaking, I mean, I have thought about doing a film on this for Karp Academy, but I couldn't think of a way of doing it that wasn't preachy. And I don't want any of my content to be preachy, but there is certainly a sermon to be spread about considering other anglers and etiquette. But it's, you know, even so far as, you know, I've seen people turn up at the lake. Like if I turn up at the busy club lake I'm fishing and someone's already in the car park getting his gear out of the barrow,
Yeah.
then I will ask him where he wants to go. I won't think, right, I'll grab a bucket and because he's putting his barrow together and leg it off, and you know that's
Yeah, because
bad
that's
manners.
how it used to be. That's how it was. But unfortunately, it isn't like that now. I've seen
Mm.
guys in the passenger seat of a car bailing out with the bucket whilst the car's still moving. You know, but they've not even come to a stop and they're off round the lake. And you just think,
Wow.
I've just got back in my car and gone somewhere else or gone home because
Yeah.
I cannot fish under those sort of circumstances. But yeah, it's an interesting one. Like you say, etiquette. When you talk about etiquette, it does sound like a bit preachy, doesn't it? A bit,
Well,
you know, it's like, oh, it's an old school thing, but I don't think it should be classed as that. I think it should be it should be alongside etiquette, should be alongside learning watercraft. But hey, I'm old school, so
no, yeah, you got me
that's the way it
thinking.
is, I
You got
suppose.
me thinking. Yeah, it'd be nice to see more.
And what do you think? Yeah, what do you think about obviously with the Carp Academy thing? Do you do it? Do you do any underwater filming, or is that something that you would like to do, or is it something you feel not
Um,
necessary?
I've recently been in conversation with the guy who's doing the 3D. Is it 3D?
Oh,
No,
VR underwater.
the VR. That's it. Thank you. He's,
Yeah,
he's
funny enough, I'm doing an interview with him.
Oh, are you? Oh, right. Okay. Well, he's got a lot to say.
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
interesting guy, nice guy, Scottish guy. I
that's it.
spoke to him for about an hour, and he's a little bit. He's invested a lot into the tech, and the big companies
Yeah,
want ownership of the tech, and he doesn't want to give it up. Quite rightly. He has asked. My reticence on underwater filming is. Well, it's twofold. So the way that I view underwater films is that they're brilliant. They're really entertaining. We all like watching carp feeding. Nothing wrong with them. But people lose sight of the fact that it's an entirely fabricated situation. So what they
yeah,
don't realize,
yeah,
a lot of them, is that to make an underwater film in virtually, in fact, in all cases, unless someone will tell me, unless someone's putting a GoPro in on a pole and they've just put it in an hour ago, the professionally made films are using considerably agricultural bits of apparatus which have to be put in situ, and then you have to close the whole area off for angling, because if people cast and hook it and so on, so you have to stop the fish in there. Then you have to pre-bait the area to get the fish used to feeding in front of the camera. So you've got an area of no angling
yeah,
pressure that's been pre-baited. So it is as alien an angling situation for the mainstream populace that you could possibly have. So when that is then
yeah,
used to sell products, and people buy into it, yeah, have you seen the underwater film? Yeah, yeah, they did that, and I need to do that. I need to buy that. No, just think of it as you've got two sections in YouTube. You've got your fiction and your non-fiction, and your fiction is for entertainment, and your non-fiction is not underwater films. But I'm
yeah,
always open to things. This guy who's doing the VR was very interesting. It might be something that we would consider in the future, where it would have to be if I could find a way of making it work, notwithstanding the things that I've just said to you. So
yeah.
I don't know whether that would or could happen, but yeah, I mean, I'm not knocking underwater films. I'm just saying take them in the right way.
Mm.
What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I've been in contact with him just before Christmas, and we're going to sit down and do an interview this month. But yeah, like you say, the tech that he's developed is very good and quite unique as well. And I think be quite interesting to see how that sort of comes on over the next year or so. So okay, well look, Adam, I've took up an absolute load of your time. We've still got probably another 30 or 40 questions for you, probably another couple of hours. But I think we'll save that for another time. It's been really fascinating, really interesting, and I'm more surprised on your journey into carp fishing. It just an incredible story.
Thank you.
And hopefully it will carry on and go from strength to strength. And I think with a nice way to finish off is to congratulate you on, is it the second year running for the award for the
Oh, thank you very
Pennings Karp
much. Yeah,
Academy?
thank you for that, Mark. Yeah, it's the Angling Times voted, well, the public voted us as the best subscription platform out there, which against obviously very stiff competition, not just from the carp fishing market, but from the general course fishing market, where there's some brilliant platforms. So
Mm.
to win it once was astounding to me. To win it twice has just left me speechless. So yeah, thank you. That meant an awful lot.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And I suppose really I should go away and subscribe now.
Well, mate, I'll tell you what. I'll drop you a line separately. Maybe we'll sort out a little promo for your viewers, and for yourself.
It's Yeah, absolutely. That would be fantastic. So, Adam, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for taking part in this, and hopefully, when we get out the other side of spring or something, we can have another catch up and see
100%.
where you're at then as well.
Definitely, mate. It's been a great
Brilliant. Thanks
pleasure
very
talking
much.
to you, Mark. Thanks for having me on, mate.
No problem. My pleasure. Thanks,
Bye
Adam.
bye.